It's a funny thing, trust. It's not a fortress with high walls and a moat. It's more like a pane of glass. For 20 years I looked through it and saw the life I'd built with my wife, Sarah. It was clear, beautiful, and I never once thought to check for cracks. Then I found the hotel receipt tucked into a side pocket of her purse, a flimsy piece of paper that shattered everything. My first instinct was a hot, blinding rage. The second was something colder, sharper. I didn't just want to know the truth, I wanted to witness it. I wanted to be there when my world ended. The receipt was for a future date, a new crack just waiting to form. So I made a reservation of my own. You think you know how this story of the cheating wife ends? A screaming match, a slammed door, a bitter divorce. Think again. What I uncovered in the room next door changed everything. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1, The Hum of a Lie. For the last year, our marriage had developed a low, almost imperceptible hum. It wasn't the warm, contented thrum of a well-oiled machine. It was the electric buzz of a faulty wire, the kind you ignore until it either shorts out or burns the whole damn house down. I'm Mark, by the way. 48 years old, an architect who designs other people's dream homes while mine was slowly developing fatal structural flaws. The signs were all there, of course. They always are, in retrospect. They're like clues in a mystery you weren't even aware you were supposed to be solving. Sarah, my wife of 2 decades, had become distant. She'd always been the vibrant one, the social butterfly who dragged me, the quiet homebody, out into the sun. But her light had started to shine everywhere but on me. Her phone, once a casual accessory left on the kitchen counter, was now her constant, silent companion, angled away from my line of sight with a practiced flick of her wrist. There were the late nights at the gallery where she did freelance consulting, the last-minute weekend workshops that were suddenly essential for her career. I'd tried to talk about it. Hey, you seem a little stressed lately. Everything okay? She'd give me that brilliant, dismissive smile. Just busy, Mark, you know how it is. This new project is a killer. And I'd let it go because I loved her, because I trusted her. And maybe, if I'm being honest with myself, because it was easier than facing the alternative. I'd made sacrifices for our family. 15 years ago, I was on the partner track at a top firm in Chicago. It was a pressure cooker, 80-hour weeks, a life lived on stale coffee and adrenaline. Then our son, Leo, came along. Sarah wanted to be home with him, but she also didn't want to lose her connection to the art world she loved. So I made a choice. I left the big firm and started my own smaller local practice. It meant less prestige, less money, but it meant I was home for dinner. It meant I could coach Leo's little leg team. It meant Sarah could ease back into her consulting work without the crushing weight of full-time daycare. I never regretted it, or so I told myself. Our life was good. We had a beautiful house I'd designed myself, a smart, funny kid who was now off at college, and a shared history that felt as solid as the foundations I poured for a living. But the hum was getting louder. It was in the silences during dinner, filled only by the clinking of our forks. It was in the way she'd laugh at a text message and then catch my eye, her smile faltering for a split second. The most jarring change was our intimacy. The easy affection that had been the bedrock of our relationship had evaporated. A hug felt perfunctory, a kiss on the cheek a social obligation. When I tried to initiate more, she'd plead exhaustion or a headache. I remembered a time, years ago, when our desire for each other was a living thing in our house, a fire that never quite went out. Now, the embers were cold. I'd lie awake at night, feeling the 3-foot chasm between us in our king-sized bed, and wonder when exactly my wife had become my roommate. I'd chalked it up to a phase, a midlife slump, the empty nest blues after Leo left. I made excuses for her because I couldn't bear to make an accusation. Part 2, a slip of paper, a slice of truth. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. It was mundane, utterly forgettable, which made the gut punch that much harder. Sarah was in the shower and I was getting ready for work. Her purse, an expensive leather tote I'd bought her for her last birthday, had tipped over on the dresser, spilling its contents. A wallet, keys, a dozen tubes of lipstick, the usual chaos. As I was scooping everything back in, my fingers brushed against a folded piece of paper in a side pocket. It was a receipt. My first thought was that she'd bought me a surprise. My birthday was a few weeks away. A flicker of hope, maybe even guilt for my suspicions, warmed my chest. then I unfolded it. The logo at the top read, the Serafina Hotel. It was one of those chic, ridiculously overpriced boutique hotels downtown. The kind of place with mood lighting and $1,000-a-night suites that called themselves experiences. We weren't experience people. We were find a decent Hyatt with free breakfast people. The charge was for one night. A king suite with city view. My eyes scanned for the date. It wasn't in the past. It was for this coming Friday. Check-in at 3:00 p.m. Check out Saturday at noon. My blood ran cold. This Friday, Sarah was supposed to be at a 2-day art and patronage conference in Milwaukee. She told me about it for weeks, lamenting the long drive and the boring panels she had to sit through. Milwaukee. The Serafina Hotel was on Rush Street, less than 10 miles from our suburban home. The name on the reservation was hers, Sarah Caldwell. But there was a second-line item that made my stomach clench into a tight, painful knot. Champagne and rose petal turn-down service, $150. I stood there, the flimsy paper trembling in my hand, the sound of the shower a roaring in my ears. Every lie, every late night, every angled phone, every tired excuse clicked into place like a series of tumblers in a lock, and the door just swung wide open. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a reservation. A premeditated champagne and rose petals betrayal. My mind reeled. Who was it? When did it start? The questions were a swarm of angry wasps in my head. I thought of confronting her right then and there, bursting into the bathroom and waving the receipt in her face. I pictured her denial, the feigned shock, the inevitable accusations that I was snooping, that I was paranoid. The gaslighting, I had seen enough friends go through this to know the script, and then a different thought crept in. It was cold, clear, and sharp. If she could plan this, so could I. The rage was still there, a white-hot fire in my gut, but something else was being forged in that heat. Resolve. She had written this play, cast her characters, and booked the stage, but she had no idea I'd just found a copy of the script. Part 3, the longest drive downtown. The next 3 days were a masterclass in self-control. I was an actor playing the part of the devoted, slightly oblivious husband. I made her coffee in the morning. I asked about the Milwaukee conference, feigning interest in the keynote speakers. Don't forget to pack a warm coat, I said, my voice unnervingly steady. It gets chilly by the lake. Each word felt like a lie I was swallowing. Inside, I was a wreck. A maelstrom of emotions churned within me. There was the profound, soul-crushing heartbreak, 20 years. Had it all been a lie, I'd scroll through photos on my phone, us at Leo's graduation, on vacation in Italy, smiling on our wedding day. Was she smiling at me or at the prospect of a future without me? Then there was the anger, a raw, primal fury that made me want to punch a hole in the wall. It was followed by waves of self-doubt. Was I not enough? Was I boring? Had I let myself go? Did I become so focused on being a provider and a father that I forgot how to be a husband? I tortured myself with these questions in the dead of night, staring at the ceiling while Sarah slept soundly beside me, a stranger in my bed. Amidst the pain and anger, there was a strange, dark thrill. It was the thrill of the hunt, of knowing something no one else did. I was no longer a passive victim of circumstance. I was an active participant. On Wednesday, during my lunch break, I made the call. My heart hammered against my ribs as I dialed the Serafina Hotel. Good afternoon, the Serafina. How may I direct your call? A cheerful, professional voice chirped. Hi, I'd like to make a reservation for this Friday, I said, my voice a low growl. Certainly, sir. For how many nights? Just one. I booked room 407, a king suite with city view, directly adjacent to room 408, Sarah's room. I used a credit card she wouldn't recognize, my business account. When the confirmation email arrived, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The trap was set. Friday came faster than I expected. That morning, Sarah packed her overnight bag. I watched her fold a silk blouse and a black dress that I hadn't seen in years. It was a dress she'd once worn on our anniversary, a dress that had always made my heart skip a beat. Seeing it now, knowing it wasn't for me, felt like a fresh betrayal. Okay, honey, I'm off, she said, pecking me on the cheek. Her perfume, a scent I used to love, was cloying. The traffic to Milwaukee is going to be a nightmare. I'll probably just turn my phone off and listen to a podcast. Don't wait up. Drive safe, I said, the words tasting like ash. Call me when you get to the hotel. She smiled, a perfect practiced smile. Of course. I watched her back out of the driveway, her wave a final, casual twist of the knife. I waited for an hour, then packed my own small bag. I didn't know what I would find, what I would do, or how this night would end. I only knew I couldn't live with the hum of the lie any longer. The drive downtown was the longest 10 miles of my life. Every love song on the radio was a mockery. Every billboard featuring a happy couple was a personal insult. I was a ghost haunting the ruins of my own life on my way to the scene of the crime. Part 4, The Man in Room 408. The Serafina Hotel was exactly as I'd pictured it, offensively stylish and suffocatingly quiet. The lobby was a cavern of muted grays, brushed gold, and pretentious art. I checked in under my own name, my hands sweating as I handed over my credit card. The concierge, a young woman with a professionally serene expression, gave me my key card, room 407. The room was beautiful and sterile, a perfect cage of beige and cream. It smelled of money and disinfectant, but I barely noticed the plush carpet or the floor-to-ceiling window with its stunning view of the city. My focus was entirely on the wall, the common wall, the wall that separated my manufactured reality from Sarah's hidden truth. I pressed my ear against it, but there was only silence from room 408. I checked my watch, 3:15 p.m. She'd be here soon. I felt a surge of adrenaline, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. I paced the room like a caged animal, my mind racing through a dozen different scenarios. Should I confront them the moment they walked in? Should I call her phone just to hear it ring in the room next door? At 3:47 p.m., I heard the telltale beep and click of a keycard in the adjacent lock. The door to room 408 opened and closed. My breath hitched. I rushed to the wall, my ear pressed so hard against the cool plaster that it hurt. I heard her voice, light and happy in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Oh wow, this room is incredible." Then a man's voice, smooth and confident, replied, "Only the best for you." My blood turned to ice. It was a voice I knew. I stumbled back from the wall, my legs suddenly weak. It couldn't be. It was impossible, but there was no mistaking that self-satisfied baritone drawl. It was Julian Croft. Julian had been my professional rival for 20 years. He was the guy who stayed at the big firm when I left. He was the one who got the partnership I'd walked away from. He represented everything I had sacrificed for a life with Sarah and Leo. He was slick, wealthy, and ruthless in business. We moved in vaguely similar social circles, the kind where you trade polite but meaningless pleasantries at charity galas twice a year. Sarah had always claimed to despise him. "He's so arrogant," she'd say after every encounter. A total shark, and now she was in a hotel room with him, ordering champagne and rose petals. The betrayal was no longer just a violation of our marriage. It was a dagger plunged into the very foundation of my life's choices. She hadn't just chosen another man, she'd chosen the living embodiment of the life I had given up for her. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my head in my hands. The muffled sounds of their laughter seeped through the plaster, each peal of her joy a fresh torment. This was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. Part 5, The Sound Through the Wall. I stayed there on the floor of my $500 a night listening post for what felt like an eternity. The initial shock gave way to a cold, crystalline fury. This wasn't just an affair, it was a comprehensive demolition of my past and present. Julian Croft. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. I forced myself to stand up. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I needed proof. I needed to do more than just listen. My laptop was in my bag. I quickly looked up audio recording apps for my phone and found one that was voice-activated and could amplify sound. I set it up on the small table I dragged against the common wall, positioning the microphone as close as I could. Then, I put in my noise-canceling earbuds, turning the world into a two-person play starring my wife and her lover. Their conversation flowed in and out of focus. It was a mix of mundane chatter and the kind of intimate nonsense lovers speak. They talked about a gallery opening, a mutual acquaintance, the atrocious wine at the last fundraiser we'd all attended. It was nauseatingly normal. Then, the tone shifted. "I just can't do this anymore, Jules." Sarah's voice was a low murmur, but the app picked it up clearly. "The sneaking around, the lies. Mark asked me again this morning if I was okay. He looked so sad." A pang of something, pity maybe, shot through me. It was quickly extinguished by Julian's reply. Don't do that, Sarah, he said, his voice dripping with condescending reassurance. Don't start romanticizing your comfortable cage. You said it yourself, you feel invisible with him. He's a good man, a decent provider, a great father, but he's a Volvo, reliable, safe, and utterly boring. You, my dear, deserve a Ferrari. My fists clenched, a Volvo. After 20 years of loyalty, of putting our family first, of building a life for her, that's what I was. A boring, reliable station wagon. He doesn't see me, she whispered, and the confirmation of my deepest fear was like a physical blow. He sees the wife, the mother, the household manager. He doesn't see me anymore. With you, I feel alive again. The recording was capturing everything. The clink of champagne glasses, her soft laughter at something he said. Then the sounds became more intimate. The soft rustle of clothing, a series of soft sighs. I ripped the earbuds out, my stomach roiling. I couldn't listen to that. I wouldn't give them that power. I sat on the edge of the bed, the city lights beginning to blur through the window, my mind a blank slate of rage. What was my next move? Burst in there and start throwing punches. That was Julian's world, not mine. He'd probably love that, the chance to play the hero protecting his damsel from her brutish husband. No, my response had to be smarter. It had to be precise, it had to be on my terms. I was an architect. I didn't demolish things with a sledgehammer. I dismantled them piece by piece, foundation by foundation. And Julian Croft had just handed me the blueprints to his own destruction. Part 6, an unexpected ally in the hallway. I spent the next hour mapping out a plan. The recording on my phone was my primary weapon. Julian was at the top of his game, chairman of the city's most prestigious architectural review board, a position he used to steer lucrative contracts toward his firm. He was untouchable, a man who had built his career on an immaculate reputation, a reputation that was about to be put to the test. Around 7:00 p.m., I heard their door open again. I crept to my own door and peered through the peephole. They were heading out, dressed for dinner. Sarah was in that stunning black dress, her hand resting possessively on Julian's arm. They looked like a power couple. The thought made me sick. Once they were gone, I slipped out of my room. An idea was forming, a risky one. I walked down the hall and saw a housekeeping cart. A young woman was just finishing up a room. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound casual. She looked up, startled. "Yes, sir." "I'm in 407, I said, gesturing with my key card. "My wife and I are in town celebrating, and I was hoping to surprise her." "She's next door in 408 with her colleague." I chose the word carefully, and I was wondering if you could let me in for just a moment to leave a gift on her pillow. I held up a crisp $100 bill. The housekeeper, whose name tag read Maria, looked from the money to my face. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent. She saw something there, desperation, maybe pain. "Hotel policy does not permit," she began, but her voice trailed off. I let my guard down for a second, my face betraying the agony I was in. "Please," I whispered, "it's important." She studied me for a long moment, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "You have 2 minutes." She swiped her master key and the door to 408 clicked open. The room was a mirror image of mine, but it felt tainted. The air was thick with their perfume and cologne. The champagne bottle was half empty in an ice bucket, 2 glasses beside it. And on the bed, the rose petals from the turn-down service were scattered across the duvet. It was a perfect cliché. I didn't have a gift. My plan was simpler. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the champagne and the petals, and then walked into the bathroom. On the counter next to Sarah's makeup bag was Julian's silver monogrammed toiletry kit. JC, I took a picture of that too. Clear, undeniable proof. It wasn't just his voice on a recording, it was his presence in her room. As I turned to leave, I saw it. Lying on the bedside table was Julian's wallet and his phone. An impulse, hot and reckless, shot through me. I could take them, I could ruin his whole night, his whole weekend, but that was a blunt instrument. I had a better idea. I opened his wallet. Tucked behind his driver's license was a business card for his wife, Elizabeth Croft. I remembered meeting her at a charity event, a quiet, elegant woman who deserved better than this. I took a picture of the card, then slid the wallet back, untouched. I was out of the room in less than 90 seconds. I pressed another 100 into Maria's hand. "Thank you," I said. "You have no idea what this means." She just looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "I hope you find peace, sir." I went back to my room, my heart a war drum in my chest. I had the recording, I had the pictures, and now I had a name, Elizabeth Croft. I wasn't the only Volvo in this equation. Julian had one parked at home, too. Part 7, the cold morning confrontation. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, watching the city lights, the recording of my wife's betrayal on a loop in my head. They returned just after midnight, their laughter echoing down the hallway. I didn't listen at the wall anymore. I had everything I needed. The next morning I was up before the sun. I showered, dressed, and ordered a pot of black coffee from room service. I felt strangely calm, the emotional storm having passed, leaving a cold, hard clarity in its wake. At 8:00 a.m., I sent a single text message, not to Sarah, but to Julian's wife, Elizabeth. I found her number through a mutual contact on a country club roster I could access online. The text was simple: Mrs. Croft, my name is Mark Caldwell. I believe your husband and my wife are concluding a business meeting in room 408 of the Serafina Hotel. I am in room 407. I think you and I should talk. I attached one of the photos, the one of Julian's monogrammed toiletry kit next to Sarah's makeup bag. The reply came less than a minute later. I'll be there in 30 minutes. At 8:30 a.m., there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find Elizabeth Croft. She was just as I remembered, poised and elegant, but her eyes were shattered. I stepped aside and let her in. Coffee? I asked quietly. She shook her head, her gaze fixed on the common wall. How long? I don't know, I admitted. I found the receipt for this room 3 days ago. I didn't play the audio recording for her. I didn't need to. I just told her what I'd heard about the Volvo and the comfortable cage. I saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes. She'd heard it all before, too, in different ways. We were two strangers, united by the casual treachery of the people we loved most. We talked for nearly an hour. She wasn't hysterical or vengeful. She was heartbroken, but possessed a core of steely dignity that I deeply admired. At 9:30 a.m., Elizabeth stood up. I think it's time we checked out, she said. Together, we walked out of my room and knocked on the door of room 408. There was a pause, then the door opened a crack. It was Julian, dressed in a hotel robe, his hair tousled. His confident smirk vanished the moment he saw his wife standing next to me. His face went pale. Elizabeth, Mark, what is this? He stammered. Behind him, I could see Sarah, clutching a sheet to her chest, her face a mask of horror and disbelief. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw the full, devastating truth of what she had done. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I looked past Julian and spoke directly to Sarah, my voice devoid of emotion. Your things are still at the house. You can arrange with my lawyer to have them picked up. I'll be changing the locks this afternoon. Elizabeth was equally composed. She looked at her husband, her voice a whip crack in the quiet hallway. Don't bother coming home, Julian. I'll have your things sent to your office, and you can expect to hear from my attorney. The one who specializes in hostile divorces. I believe you know him. We turned and walked away, leaving them standing in the doorway of their five-star love nest, the rose petals on the floor suddenly looking like scattered drops of blood. We didn't look back. Part 8, the nuclear option. Walking away was the easiest and hardest thing I'd ever done. In the elevator, Elizabeth and I stood in silence, two casualties of the same war, surveying the wreckage. What will you do now? She asked as we reached the lobby. I'm going to go home, change the locks, and call my lawyer, I said. The words felt foreign, clinical. And him? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Julian, this will be messy, but he's a shark. He'll survive. That's when I knew I wasn't done. Simply ending my marriage wasn't enough. Julian hadn't just taken my wife. He had mocked my entire life's philosophy. He'd called me a Volvo. It was time to show him what happens when a reliable, boring family car gets rear-ended by a reckless Ferrari. The safety features deploy, the alarms go off, and everything grinds to a halt. He might survive, I said, looking her in the eye, but he won't be untouched. That Monday, I took the audio file, the one where Julian Croft, chairman of the City Architectural Review Board, discussed his affair with the wife of a fellow architect whose projects frequently came before said board, and I sent it. I sent it anonymously from a burner email account to two places, the editor of the city's largest newspaper and the head of the Municipal Ethics Committee. I didn't include names. I didn't have to. Julian's voice was recognizable. The context was damning. I simply titled the email, "A Conflict of Interest on the Review Board." The story broke 2 days later. It was a scandal. It didn't explicitly name Julian, but the details were specific enough that everyone in our industry knew exactly who it was. He was forced to resign from the board in disgrace. An internal investigation was launched at his firm. Clients started pulling their contracts. His immaculate reputation, the one he'd spent a lifetime building, was shattered in a matter of days by a 15-minute audio file. I had not only dismantled his affair, I had dismantled his career. It wasn't just revenge, it was architecture. Part 9, Echoes and Aftermath. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and painful conversations. I had to tell Leo, which was the hardest part. He was angry at his mother, but he was also hurting for the family he was losing. Our talk was strained, but I assured him that my love for him was the one foundation that would never crumble. Sarah tried to reach out several times. Voicemails filled with tears, apologies, and justifications. She said she'd been unhappy for years, that she felt lost, and that Julian was a mistake born of desperation. Part of me, the man who had loved her for half his life, felt a sliver of empathy. I could understand feeling lost, but I couldn't forgive the map she used to find her way out. She had chosen to burn down our home instead of simply asking me to help her fix a broken window. The divorce was surprisingly swift. With the evidence I had, she didn't fight me on anything. She walked away with what she was legally entitled to, and not a penny more. I heard through the grapevine that she and Julian hadn't lasted. Their affair, born in the thrill of secrecy and deception, couldn't survive the harsh light of public scandal. Theirs was a bond of convenience, not conviction. I sold the house. There were too many ghosts in those rooms I had so carefully designed. I bought a loft apartment downtown with a view of the skyline I had helped shape. It was stark, modern, and gloriously empty. It was a blank canvas. Part 10, Building a New Foundation. It's been a year now. The hum is gone. In its place, there's a quiet I'm still getting used to. Sometimes it's lonely, but it's an honest quiet. It's not filled with unspoken resentments or hidden lies. My work has never been better. With the cloud of Julian Croft removed from the city's architectural landscape, my firm started getting calls for projects I never would have been considered for before. Last month, my old firm, the one I left all those years ago, called me. They offered me a full partnership. They wanted my vision, my experience. After all these years, they wanted me. I accepted. I'm rebuilding, not just my career, but my life. I've reconnected with old friends, I've started traveling, and I'm learning how to be just Mark again, not Mark and Sarah. The bitterness has mostly faded, replaced by a kind of peaceful melancholy and a newfound sense of self. I realized that Sarah and Julian were right about one thing. I had become a Volvo. I was reliable, I was safe, and I was comfortable. I had put my own ambitions and passions in storage to make room for my family. What they failed to understand is that a Volvo is also built to withstand a crash. The other day, I was driving my own car, a ridiculously impractical two-seater sports car I bought on a whim, and a song came on the radio that Sarah and I used to love. For a moment, the old ache was there, a phantom limb of a life that was amputated, but then it passed. I turned the music up, rolled down the windows, and kept driving, the city skyline rushing toward me, a future I was finally designing for myself. The pane of glass is still shattered, and the pieces can never be put back together. But I'm no longer looking through it, I'm looking ahead. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? Check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga.